Hi, everybody, and welcome to the 2526 Supper Clubs. That's 2025, 2026 Supper Clubs at Montview Church.
Yeah.
We're so glad to be here for our second full year together.
Yeah.
This is so good.
It's exciting.
We have 6 months ahead of us, and we hope that you have already met in October for your 7th month. But just as a way to get to know each other, we thought it would be good to add a social month
for the first
before
one.
we jump into content. So we hope that that worked. Thanks to Heather Kerr, our Supper Club czar, who has organized all these groups and will stay in contact with your Supper Club captains, giving content and questions and negotiating any issues that might arise in the months ahead.
Yeah, so thanks, Heather.
All right. We chose a book to help guide us in the months ahead. And this book is by Krista Tippett, and it's called Becoming Wise. Krista Tippett is a broadcast journalist. She started in her broadcast journalism having a radio show on Minnesota Public Radio called Speaking of Faith. And now, and for a number of years, she's done a podcast called On Being, O-N-B-E-I-N-G, On Being, a podcast interviewing really wise minds of spiritual leaders and scientists and poets and thinkers, and it's an amazing podcast. And so Krista is a very wise woman herself and a popular author in this country, and we thought this is a great topic.
Yeah, we are, one of the reasons we're drawn to this book is she takes all that gleaning, all those interviews that she's had, and then she shares her own life experience. And she invites through 5 or 6 different themes, which we'll review in a minute, how it is that we can seek wisdom in everyday life. You know, she makes the point in this book that that she thinks humanity is sort of in our adolescence. You know, just because we might know a lot doesn't mean we're necessarily wise.
Right.
You know,
Knowledge versus wisdom.
Yeah.
I like that. I think there's some relief in knowing that's right. We are more adolescents, where we are kind of wise fools. We think we're wise. We know a lot. Yeah. And this topic really is inviting us through the course of becoming wise to be vulnerable, to ask questions, we'll talk about that, to go deeper in our relationships. And we thought this is a perfect laboratory. The Supper Club is a perfect laboratory to have those conversations and relationships that help us go deeper and in vulnerability. So we're so glad that we're doing this in circles.
And with you, In fact, for her, the spiritual maturity comes in that vulnerability. And what better way with around the table, sharing a meal.
That's right.
Supper clubs where you get to know each other, even if you're a new group forming, the meeting together, sharing a meal together, sharing ideas and sharing each other's wisdom.
Yeah.
That's where the spiritual maturity can come. I love it.
That's right. Do you want to say a little bit about the opening chapter? Because we're really starting with chapter 1 on these topics. Or why don't I go through?
Yeah, sure.
So the book is made up of 7 chapters, I believe. The first chapter being the introduction, and she lays out what she's going to do in the book. But then the following chapters, and we'll begin with the topic of words that matter. And then second, the role of the body. Third, love as a public virtue. Fourth, faith and doubt in dialogue. Fifth, hope and resilience. And the 6th month and the last chapter is called The Art of Living. And so across these months, we'll listen deeply and we'll share stories and we'll practice becoming wise together.
So this month, November, we're going to pick up the chapter that she explores how language really shapes our shared life together. And so one of the things that we thought would be interesting is to share just a little sort of piece from that chapter. We don't expect everyone to read the entire book. We certainly would encourage you to, but this isn't really a book study. It's just shaping sort of how we're bringing some of our thoughts to you. She has this line, she says, the point of learning to speak together differently or with intentionality is learning to live together differently. So in this chapter, she's really inviting us to think about how we use words, how we use language, how we ask questions, how we listen to other people's language. And when we can do that more intentionally, we can do that a little differently than maybe how we've been socialized to do it, we can be with each other, both around that dinner table where you are now, but also out in the world, in our communities, you know.
And Tippett wrote this, it was published in 2016, and obviously words and conversations and good conversations has been key and was key for her. 9 years later, maybe more key, almost 10 years later, where we are right now as a culture, we are not listening. We are not in good conversation, I think, overall. So this is a great opportunity to revisit this idea of listening.
Yeah, let's pick up a little passage, and then let's kind of explore that. How about that? So Tippett writes, listening is more than being quiet while the other person speaks until you can say what you have to say. And she cites another author, Rachel Naomi Remen, who talks about training doctors to listen. And she picks up this phrase, generous listening. What does it mean to listen with generosity or generous listening? She says, generous listening is powered by curiosity, a virtue we can invite and nurture in ourselves to render it instinctive. So how is it that we listen generously to one another? That's really what she's inviting us to do, you know.
It sounds so good on paper, and using our words around that. I think that is the $60,000 perhaps question. One of the questions that does come to me, Jason, is how do we really learn that practice? I mean, without having it modeled to us, or literally practicing this idea of generous listening, of curiosity. I mean, I can catch myself, and then I want to go on to share whatever my story is. You know, it's hard to stay with generosity and curiosity of someone's, or we move to debate and argument because we think there's a point to be made and we are ready to make our point. But to go deeper, to invite the person sharing to go deeper in what they're saying is very generous.
Yeah, in fact, I would even call it a spiritual practice to catch that impulse. We're socialized, as you said, to like make our point or make our case, or we're just listening to, but we're half listening because we're crafting our response before the person's even done talking. You know, I think that awareness, can we catch ourselves? I want to say something. Can we just pull that back and then say, okay, let me allow the person to really finish. And then instead of trying to offer, you know,
a counter or something.
Is to then, as you did in your sermon recently, how can we then lean in with, well, tell me more about that. Tell me more about your experience. How does that, how do you arrive at that conclusion? Or where instead of trying to sort of lead the person with a question to convince them they're wrong, I've never done that, by the way.
But yes, you have.
But genuinely curious, you know?
Very good. And connected to this curiosity then is your willingness, our willingness to be surprised by the answer. If we're going to be curious and we have to say, oh, that reframes what I'm thinking about, or, you know, responding to this person's engagement with me. And of course, right now, I think around the political, cultural spectrum where we're falling out or engaging is so challenging. So this is really a good time to be talking about this.
She picks that up as well in this chapter, where the invitation, this, as you said, you know, someone 10 years old, I think we are even more divided on kind of political or social issues. Her invitation is to, instead of going right for the hot button issues, part of the practicing is being in conversation with people who hold very different views than us, and asking and listening using language not around those charged issues, but around other things, around shared lived experience. She has this this line that you can't debate someone's lived experience.
That's
You
right.
might debate their conclusions or their opinions.
Yeah.
You can't debate what they've experienced. And if we stay with that.
So stay with stories.
Right. Yeah.
And that's where language and words can't be debated, as you're saying. I mean, if it's my experience, my story, my lived reality, you can't argue with it. You might invite me to go deeper or to reflect maybe a little more, in a complex way.
Yeah.
So using language for
good.
that. How do you craft a good question? If you're listening, I'm going to put you on the spot. If you're listening to someone share their story, which you do very often, how in your mind, rather than countering them, how do you know what's a good question? Are there some simple tools to ask good questions of people?
Yeah, the one that you used a few weeks ago, I think is always a good one in our toolkit. So, can you tell me more about that? Right? Just lean in. Tell me more about that. Or, I am curious to hear more about your experience. Right? What is it about your experience leads you to that conclusion or that position you have around something? Staying near to the experience, and what I would say is kind of thicken the story more. Any questions about thickening the story of someone's experience is always helpful. The other one too is, are you open? Are you open to hearing a different experience?
And
See,
just
seeking
asking.
permission. Instead of just kind of coming in, saying like, would you be open to hearing a different view? Like, that's a question that might open up more dialogue around difference.
Yeah.
How about you? What are the questions
what
you
is occurring to me in this conversation or on this topic is, I feel like I can do this better with people I don't know as well. But what's really hard for me to show curiosity is in my marriage.
Oh, yeah.
Or with my family.
Yeah,
Because
sure.
I just think I know what they're going to say, right? Or what the answers are. And so to stay in a posture of generous listening, curiosity, and openness to being surprised. Whew.
With people we live with or have been married to a long time.
Exactly.
Or what,
39 years, kind of makes you go, I know what you're going to say. And I'm not going to agree with that anyway. But I'm working on it.
And I've been trying to convince you've been wrong for 39 years, right?
Exactly. No, but this is good. It's a spiritual discipline, as you said. It's a practice, and so in the next 6 months, I think this is a good practice.
Well, I was just going to add on, and isn't that the case that one would think you could be more vulnerable with people with whom you're close.
Yeah.
But there's a flip side to that, which is so much embedded assumptions, right?
Yep.
And so thank you for naming that. I think a lot of us can relate to what you're describing. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that was the kernel of gold in the nugget of gold in this. You have permission to not agree with your partner.
Thank you, Tim.
He'll never watch this, so it doesn't matter.
And for me, thank you, Erica.
Anyway, so we are going to, at the end of every topic, every month, we're going to offer a podcast that Krista Tippett did with a thinker, an author, a wise person. And so we will put that link to the podcast in the email that you'll receive, I believe. So we encourage you to watch that for each of the themes.
This month, we're going to offer a link to her it's her podcast episode, but instead of her asking the questions, Pico Iyer is going to ask her. They flip the mics,
That's great.
and he invites her to explore some of these questions around language. So I think you'll all will like it.
Yeah. So the topic is words and also becoming wise, and there'll be questions for you to discuss. And we encourage you, let me reiterate, this is a time to get to know each other. So at the beginning of every supper, we encourage you to go around and check in. And that doesn't mean like, oh, this week was busy and da-da-da-da-da. Just, how are you doing? Just check in, ask a good question, and that will elicit a good response. So we encourage that, Nick.
It's so nice to be back doing supper clubs.
It is, yeah.
I've kind of missed it.
All right. Happy
All right.
November. If we won't see you before our next video, we wish you a happy Thanksgiving too.
And we'll see you in December.
All right.
Okay.
Have a